So that process of socialization, where the Prophet then told us in the hadith, his parents will make him into a Jew, his parents will make him into a Christian, his parents will make him into a Magian. That's primary socialization. But you can extend that. The society can make us into atheists. The society can make us into liberals. The society can make us into feminists. Not that feminism and liberalism is totally wrong, and we'll come to that on Thursday, okay? But it's a process of socialization. We have certain social attitudes and beliefs that had we been born and raised in a different time and a different place, surely we would not have those beliefs. So that process of socialization is what moves the human being away from believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the purity of his monotheism, and recognizing that contract that you had initially with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You know, one thing I've been looking into and I found quite interesting, and I'm thinking that maybe you will find quite interesting as well, after I let you wait here in suspense. Yes, and this might seem like it's completely not related to what we're talking about today. Don't worry, it is. It's the idea of contract. I was recently having a discussion with some liberals about prostitution. What did you say? What are you talking about, man? We're talking about what you never knew about God. Why are you talking about prostitution? Let me tell you why. They were basically asking me, why is prostitution wrong? And obviously from an Islamic perspective, we say it's haram because, you can't have sexual intercourse before marriage and so on. Yes? Don't smile, brother. You can't. But obviously, if you're speaking to someone who does not believe in your worldview, I have to explain it to them in their worldview, right? So I said, the reason why prostitution is wrong on liberalism is because, and by the way, this is not why it's wrong in Islam. It's wrong in Islam because قال الله وقال الرسول, okay? But I was answering their question and I was thinking about it as I was saying it. On liberalism, the problem is, a lot of it is based on consent and contract, yeah? So if let's say a client, and this is going to sound very crude, I do apologize. A client wants to use the services of a prostitute. And he pays the woman, or the man, yes? Yeah, there are male prostitutes. And he pays the woman, or he pays the man. Let's say for the sake of argument, how much is it usually for? This is a true question. If anyone answered that question, we would, yes. Let's say it's £50. I don't know how much, ringlets, or whatever you have it. What do you have in this country? What's your currency here? Ringgit. Whatever it may be, right? Now, say for instance the woman agrees. And during the act, she says, no, stop. Like during the act, she says, stop. Now there's a problem here. The problem is he paid that money. But at any point, based on the law and other reasons, human rights, she can say, don't touch me, please don't do this to me. And if he continues, it actually could be rape. She can accuse him of rape. I say that's actually not fair from a liberal perspective because the contract is broken. He's paid her money and she didn't deliver the service. But if she does deliver the service, it will hurt her. So you can never have a contract like that. It's avoidable, and it's not a regulatable thing. And the same thing could be said about surrogacy, by the way. Like IVF. If you say to someone, well, you can be the mother of my child, but you're the surrogate mother, yes? But that woman gives birth to the child. If they make a contract, I'm going to give you X amount of money for that child. But then the woman who gives birth to the child decides, I don't want to give this child away. This actually happened in America, and they ruled in favor of the surrogate mother. They said that she didn't have full information and therefore she has a right to keep that child, even though the sperm was of another man and the egg was of another woman. So it messes up the contract. Surrogacy, therefore, on liberalism, on contract theory, is problematic. And so is prostitution. It's just an argument, just in case anyone tries to, right? But the idea is this: why am I talking about contract? And why have I made that diversion? The reason is this: there is something which unifies, yes, Western thought and Islamic thought, and it is the idea of contract. It is the idea of contract. The Quran says, "Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu awfu bil uqud." O you who believe, fulfill the contracts. And in liberal theory, one of the underpinning things is got to make sure that you fulfill the contract. Because it's so obvious that chaos would ensue. Listen carefully. Chaos would ensue if contracts are not abided by. Imagine you have peace treaties between countries and they're revoked straight away because contracts are not respected. Contracts are important on everyone's worldview, on our worldview and on their worldview. Why is that important? Because imagine, listen carefully, what is the consequence, according to them, of rupturing a contract? Yeah, you can have anarchy, but usually the law has in place legal consequences, yes? If the law has in place legal consequences which can range from prison sentence to fining to death, in the case of treason, the idea that there should be a consequence attached to a severing of a contract is universally understood, almost. Except with anarchists and other people, right? But imagine this. Imagine we, as human beings, are severing a contract with the ultimate source of protection. Wait a minute. Say that one more time. I don't know how you made that diversion and you came back and what you're talking about. The ultimate source of protection, we believe, is Allah. He provides the ultimate source of protection. So, isn't it the same logic to suppose, to postulate, to submit, to say that if you break the contract that was initially in place, the mithaq, and that you agreed upon in the primordial state, if you sever that contract, there should be a consequence. And it's within the rights of the source of protection to remove that protection from you. That's why the question that's usually postulated in these discussions is, if God is so merciful, then why does hell exist? Why is He putting the people in the hellfire? What kind of merciful God is that? He's putting the people in the hellfire. What kind of justice is that? The hellfire is an ultimate manifestation of the removal of Allah's protection from humans. Say that one more time. The hellfire is an ultimate manifestation of the removal of Allah's protection from human beings. And since we agree on the premise that it's consequentially justifiable to say that protection should no longer be afforded to those who sever the contracts, then what more contract more problematic to sever than the one who's providing for you in all aspects and domains and spheres of life? The answer to that question is the people that don't understand the hellfire and the punishment therein are those same people that don't understand the severity of the contract that they have agreed to and that they were reminded of in this world. So you see, it all makes sense now. But someone may argue and say, but hold on, no problem. I understand this concept. I understand, yes, that if you sever the contract, there should be consequences. Yeah? If you sever the contract, there should be consequences. From this perspective, God is within His rights to give you those consequences. So what then about proportionality? For instance, if someone was a kafir or disbeliever, someone who severed the contract, because what is a disbeliever? A disbeliever is someone, kafir literally means kafara, from the farmer. He's a farmer. Because he's literally covering the truth. Like the seed, you coat it with soil, and the truth, you're covering it with falsehood. And that is the ultimate manifestation of the severing of the contract. But the question of proportionality will come into play, because they'll say, okay, if they were disbelievers for 3 years, or 5 years, or 10 years, or 20 years, then why should they be in the hellfire forever? And this is a lack of proportionality. Yes, this is a lack of proportionality. Well, we say to that, who told you that time should all be treated equally and sins should be connected to time inextricably? Let me give you an example. And this brother of mine called Abdullah Andalusi, we were discussing this, he was giving me these pointers. It was a really good example he gave. I like to give him credit for that. He said, for example, if someone takes out a knife and he stabs someone, goes straight for the jugular and kills the person in 3 seconds. Yes? If someone does that in 3 seconds, should they be punished for 3 seconds? On this logic, they should be. Why not? 3 seconds, you only were transgressing for 3 seconds. So go into prison for 3 seconds, or do this, go to the hellfire for 3 seconds. No. Clearly, there is a problem with equating time here. So the idea is, shirk, or the association of partners with Allah, is valued so epistemically high in the ranking of crimes, because it is the ultimate rupturing of the most important contract, that even doing it for 1 second, even believing in that and doing it for 1 second, it's conceivable for 1 second, 2 seconds, 5 seconds, and you die upon it, and those are your last 5 seconds, that you will be in eternal punishment in the hellfire. And that is logically, rationally justifiable on both worldviews. Because to understand Allah and Tawheed, we must understand shirk and how dark and horrible and evil and grotesque and disgusting this crime is. How dare someone redirect their veneration, their love, their awe, their hope, their fear from the one who's offering all sources of hope and all sources of protection from fear, who is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the most problematic and egregious and the most vile of crimes any human being can do. Worse than theft, worse than murder, worse than rape. There's nothing worse than that. Why is murder wrong? Because it's an ultimate violation of someone's right to life. Why is rape wrong? Because it's an ultimate violation of a man or a woman's right to dignity and to decision making in sexual intercourse. So why is shirk wrong? Because it's an ultimate redirection. It's an ultimate redirection of all of the attitudes, the beliefs, and the actions that should be positioned to the one who allows them to be positioned to anything in the first place, to other than him. It's the worst kind of oppression. Shirk is the worst kind of oppression. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives us some interesting points. He says, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَن يَتَّخِذْ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ أَنْدَادًا يُحِبُّونَهُمْ كَحُبِّ اللَّهِ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَشَدُّ حُبًّا لِلَّهِ. He says there are some people who take andad, and nid is a false god, and they love them as much as the believers, as they ought to love Allah, and the believers are more loving of Allah. With this verse we know that if you position your love, your ultimate love, to other than the creator of love and the source of love, who is Al-Wud, who is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Al-Wadud, the one who is the source of all love, then what kind of egregious misappropriation is that? What kind of movement away from the truth is that? How can that be justified? That's the worst thing you can imagine. That really is the worst thing you can imagine. I have a question. My question is this. Yes, get your attention. You wake up now. Yeah, this guy was asleep. I have a question. Why is it the case that if I pull out a knife and break down or cut down a tree, which is a living creature, yeah? A tree is a living creature. If I cut down a tree, or if I cut open a baby, a living baby, why is it that almost everyone, almost intrinsically, would say that doing the latter thing, i.e. cutting the child, is more problematic, more sinful, and so on, than cutting down the tree? Where it's the same action. Think about it. It's actually the same action. I've gotten the knife, I'm cutting the thing, same action. The reason why is because we place more value on the life of humans than we do on the life of trees. Obviously, in this analogy, we can't super extend it to Allah, because you can't transgress against Allah in a way that would harm Him. But the idea is you can transgress to Allah in a way that will harm yourself. And so if the presupposition is that the transgression or the aggregate net value of how bad something is depends upon the thing you're doing it to. Say that one more time. Okay. How bad something is depends upon what or who you're doing that thing to. Like in our example, cutting a child or cutting down a tree, they're not seen as the same, are they? So, what about if you have a maximally perfect, all-powerful, all-loving agency, whereby there is no value that can possibly, rationally, fathomably be more powerful than Him? What about in that situation? Transgression towards this entity must by logical necessity mean that that transgression should be valued in the highest form possible. If not, then on materialism, all of these atoms have the same epistemic value. Me cutting open a child, me cutting the tree, same thing, just rearrangement of atoms, doesn't matter. I can do whatever I want. But the truth is this, guys. The truth is, you will never be able to value yourself, and we will never be able to value ourselves collectively until we realize how we have been given value. We will never be able to love ourselves until we realize how we have been given that love. Because the truth is, I was reading Eric Fromm, I think his name is Eric Fromm, with 2 M's at the end, and he was talking about loving oneself. Because we talked about hellfire for a long time, so maybe I think we should end with love in heaven or something, because it is a bit sometimes of an intense subject. But he was saying, Eric Fromm was saying, it's not from egocentricity. Yeah, it's not something which is selfish if you actually love yourself. Because what you're doing is you're valuing your integrity as a human being. That was his argument. He's saying you're valuing your integrity, your person as a human being. And loving yourself is not an expression of ego. It's not. But if we extend this understanding to asking the important question of who created us, which we talked about probably in the last session, and I'm sure you had that conversation yesterday as well. Who created us? And we come to the conclusion that it was this all-powerful, all-knowing, Al-Qadir, Al-Alim, Al-Hakim, the wise one, the powerful one, and so on. And of course the loving one as well. Yeah. When you come to that conclusion, then you love more the one who created you than yourself. And the reason why is because he was the sabab, the reason, the cause for your existence. So as we say, min babi awla, it's prioritized for you as a human being to love the thing or the one that created you more than yourself, because it caused you to be. And so, having love in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, going back to our example of the baby and the mother, is something not only immediately and intrinsically known, but should be rationally understood as well. If you love yourself, you should love Allah. And that's why Umar ibn al-Khattab, when he went to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and he was asked about who does he love the most, and he says, I love you, i.e. the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, more than everyone except for myself. And then he said, go back, because you have to love Allah and His Messenger more than everyone else. And he went back, introspected, came back and changed his position. And that spiritual engagement with oneself about how we love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala should be something we're consistent with. We should reason to ourselves on a daily basis that Allah is the ultimate source of all the love in the world, and therefore we should be most loving to Him. And I'll end with this, because we want to open up the questions and answers. What I will say is that look what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has done for us. Despite the fact that we proverbially, signed the agreement, if you like, the cosmic agreement, the spiritual, metaphysical, cosmic agreement with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that, Alastu bi rabbikum, qalu bala shahidna. We said, yes, we do take you as your master. Despite the fact that we signed that cosmic agreement, Allah yet gave us the chance through messengers and prophets to realize His existence once again. And subhanAllah, Surah An-Nur and Ayat An-Nur in particular, it gives us a beautiful analogy of how this all works out, and that requires another lecture altogether, but there's one thing in particular which I wanted to stress. Where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that this process is nurun ala nur. That we're born almost, you could say, you could argue, with this innate fitrah, this predisposition, this primordial state to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just like a baby loves his mother, or even more than that, way more than that. We're born with that love, we're born with that connection, we're born with that agreement. And yet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala provides for us messengers and prophets that help reaffirm that agreement, remind us of the agreement, give us evidences for the agreement, and so on and so forth. And so, just like, well, someone will say, maybe a materialist skeptic, I don't remember the agreement, Well, that's the point. You might not remember the agreement because of the process of socialization. Well, this is not an agreement I willfully got myself into. You didn't willfully get yourself into this agreement with your mother. You didn't choose to be your mother's son, for instance, or daughter. But by virtue of relationship, the agreement existed. And by virtue of existence, that relationship existed. And in the same way, by virtue of us being ibad Allah, the slaves of Allah, the creation of Allah, the agreement exists, and we must remind ourselves of it. We must love Allah, bring ourselves to fear no fear more than His fear, and have no love more than His love, and have no more hope than in the hope He puts in us. Jazakumullahu khairan, and we're going to open it up, inshallah, for questions and answers.
What if someone says, I didn't agree to the contract, I didn't choose to be born? How can the contract be fair if it's one-sided?
We don't agree to the contracts a lot of the time, and that doesn't mean that they're not correct. For example, has anyone agreed here? Has anyone been asked a question? Do you want to follow the Malaysian law or not? No, you're forced by virtue of existence in this land that you have a social contract with the Malaysian government, and if you go against the law, there are consequences. And so the assumption is contracts require consent. Contracts do not require consent, not on liberalism, not on social contract theory, and certainly not in universal law theory. Contracts exist by virtue of relationship sometimes. I'm born, I'm the child of my mother. I owe my mother a deeper societal, sociological, and familial duty than I owe any other woman. I didn't choose to be her son, and she did. Well, she might have chosen to be my mother, that's different. Well, it's definitely one-sided. I didn't choose that. You see? But it's a contract which most societies accept. Why is it the case? For example, let me give you an example, right? If you go and you have a child, yes? If you have a child, obviously for women, if you go to the hospital and your child is born, have you ever thought about why is it the case that you can take that child home now? And the government says, look, give me the child. So it's my child. For example. The reason why is because there's a biological presupposition that all children that have been conceived of women almost belong to those women. They are in contract with those women. And there's a biological presupposition which is upheld by every society I know of. Every single, except for the Pharaoh Egypt one where they used to burn the boys and all that kind of stuff in the ancient times. But it's upheld, and the reason why is because it's almost intuitive knowledge, right? So the presupposition is that contracts should always be two-sided. No, they can be one-sided, and they're still legitimate and valid in some cases.